Welcome to the Backyard Bouquet podcast, where stories bloom from local flower fields and home gardens. I'm your host, Jennifer Galizia of the Flowering Farmhouse. I'm a backyard gardener turned flower farmer located in Hood River, Oregon. Join us for heartfelt journeys shared by flower farmers and backyard gardeners. Each episode is like a vibrant garden, cultivating wisdom and joy through flowers. From growing your own backyard garden to supporting your local flower farmer, the Backyard Bouquet is your fertile ground for heartwarming tales and expert cut flower growing advice. All right, flower friends, grab your gardening gloves, garden snips, or your favorite vase because it's time to let your backyard bloom. Hi, flower friends, and thanks so much for tuning in again today to the Backyard Bouquet podcast. If you've ever found yourself with more flowers than you know what to do with, or you've wished you could hold on to their beauty for just a little bit longer, then today's episode is for you. Today, I'm joined by Kate Punnett, founder of the August Press, a professional flower press studio that carries the essence of hope from your garden or flower farm and transforms it into a timeless work of art. With over a decade of experience as an organic urban flower grower and sustainable florist, Kate knows how flowers move, live, and inspire. Her work is all about promoting the slow arts, creating change through beauty, connecting with nature, and celebrating the aliveness of now. Through custom commissions, pressed floral prints, and community workshops, Kate invites us to slow down and reconnect with the joy that flowers bring, long after they've left the garden. Before we dive into today's episode, if you've been enjoying this podcast, I'd be so grateful if you could please take a moment to leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback helps more flower lovers find this show and keeps conversations like this blooming. All right, let's dig into today's episode. Welcome, Kate, to the Backyard Bouquet podcast.
Hi there. Thank you so much for the introduction. It's really great to be here today to chat with you.
It's so wonderful to be chatting with you as well. And I just recently learned about you and your business because of a past guest on episode 65. Jenny Jonak of Dragon Song Farm was telling us about how she uses your flower press and how amazing it is. And it was serendipitous because I have been shopping for a flower press for myself to help us do something with some of our excess flowers that we have this summer and to engage my daughter more in the farm. So I'm so excited for today's conversation.
That's so kind of Jenny. I'm in Ottawa, Canada, but actually most of my customers, I'd say about 80% of my flower press customers are from the US. So I don't really know sometimes who's buying them and if it's a gardener, if it's a artist, if it's a farmer. So it was really fun to get an email from Jenny saying, "Oh, take a listen to this clip on the podcast." And that's how I met you. So, and then you ordered a press too. So that was
Yes,
fantastic.
I think mine's coming this week in the mail. I can't wait to start using it after today's conversation.
That's great.
Kate, can you give us a little bit of a background on your story? How did you get into flowers?
Well, I was a stay-at-home mom when my kids were young, and I was homeschooling them. And like a lot of women, so like since then, I've met a lot of women with a very similar story. I didn't really find my artistic self out until I was a mom. So I had this time to devote into a creative pursuit, and I started to grow a lot of flowers. Slowly, my big vegetable gardens made way for more and more flowers. And I did some floristry training and started to make bouquets and sell them. And then we moved in just down the street. We moved to a little house that was slated for development. The elderly woman had passed on, and the children were selling this little yellow house on a nice big lot in the middle of the city. And I approached them and said, "Hey, I don't want to tear your house down. I actually want to make it my family home and to use the space to grow my flower business." And so they sold it to us, and I ripped up a lot of the lawn. I called myself an urban flower grower. And I started a sustainable studio, and slowly my business grew. It was the beginning of the flower movement. The local flower movement was just hitting the capital here, and a lot of flower farmers were starting, and there was just such a great vibe. So my studio grew and grew to the point where I kind of outgrew it. I needed to slow down. My kids' homeschooling was getting more complicated. I couldn't really work things out unless I had maybe started a bricks and mortar store or whatnot. And I just decided that it was too fast paced for me. So I quit. I took a year off, nice long fall and winter. And then in the spring, the flowers came up and the tubers were dug up and they're sitting in their crates. And I knew I needed to be with the flowers again. I just needed to find my own way with them. So I started to press, and that led to developing my own line of flower presses and an art business as well.
That's amazing. I love that you said you found your own way with flowers because as the local flower movement grows, there's not just one straight path that everyone has to follow. There's so many ways that we can utilize and share local flowers, and you are really carving a neat niche market with them with the pressed flowers. Did you have a background in pressing flowers, or how did you get into pressing them? How did you decide that that was what you were going to do?
I just started to, a lot of my work when I was working with fresh flowers was talking about hopefulness and joy. And I encountered a lot of deep discussions with my customers about vase life. And as we know, a lot of us growers and florists and gardeners, when you bring the flowers in, it's hard to say goodbye once they're cut. And that's a big part of the flower business is accepting the ephemeral nature of this beauty. And I think the essence of that is what kept me sparked and energized when I worked with flowers. And interestingly enough, that's kind of what I honed my skills into is capturing this essence and this joy and this hopefulness and finding a way to create art with it that wasn't as ephemeral as a fresh flower. And what appealed to me in the practice was that it was an old craft, and it had a slowness to it that really matched my lifestyle.
I love that. And so you don't only just press the flowers, you make art with the flowers.
Yeah, so started by pressing. I spent the first year pressing everything from the first daffodils, tulips, to the end of the sunflowers, the last of the dahlias. And I learned how to press every single thing I could, whether it was from my own garden or from this local flower collective, which I'm quite connected to because of my experience being a florist with all these farmers. So, anyway, so yeah, so I slowly started to make art and creating one of a kind originals. I make prints now, and I go to juried art shows and I show my work.
That's so fun and so fascinating. So you just said you've learned how to press all flowers. Is there any flower that you have not been successful pressing?
Yes, definitely. So this is flower pressing is very, very nuanced. I think the appeal of it is um, in that there are so many variables. And if you're someone like me, and I find a lot of flower pressers are the same, we like to solve problems. And, I could say that cosmos are the easiest flower to press, but I would take a cosmo picked at two different times from the same patch, and one will turn out vividly and one won't. So there is so many variables within that from and some hasn't really even been researched from when flowers have been pollinated, what time they've been picked at, how they've grown, if they've had too much sun, how they've been pressed, how they've been stored. So, that's the easy spectrum. So going from the hard spectrum, I would say most flowers that are the hardest to press for me is honestly a commission where I have a bride who has a flown in flower that's not peak fresh and is extra moist. These are like an orchid or something like that. These are classic wedding flowers because they are kept so well out of water. They have a moistness intact, but they're very, very hard to press.
Okay. Walk us through the process. So you grow the flowers and then you harvest them. So tell us, is there a certain stage that you're harvesting them at? And I bet that depends a lot on the flower itself, but paint us a picture of what the process looks like to press a flower.
Yeah, for sure. So you have your casual roadside, flowers that you can press and cosmos that you can pick, like my example always, because they're such an ephemeral, easy to grow and to press flower. But for me, what I'm trying to do is press the garden. And if you're pressing a garden, then you're pressing all stages of growth. So, what I love to do with my own flowers that I grow and from other farmers' flowers is to get them at bud stage, a full bloom stage. I love the stage when they die, and to press them in all those elements. And a lot of my art shows the life cycle of each flower. And I think that's what, makes my work stand out a little bit in this field, I guess. I don't know if that's true, but I think that I've heard that my work seems so alive, and I think the aliveness is because I'm showing the different stages. When you grow, like my recent poppy print, I grew my poppies from seed. I collected the poppies every single day for a month, and I pressed them every single day, and then I made a big piece of art. So you see them from the beginning to the end. So what I do is I pick flowers at all those stages, and then there's a whole bunch of different ways that you can press a flower. So I built traditional presses, and that's a big part of my business is selling my presses. And it can be quite simple. You use chipboard, you use paper, and for me, I love using industrial felt. And you layer your flowers all up in multiple layers, and then you press them. You stand on your press. Hopefully, you have a press that's strong enough that you can stand on to do a high pressure pressing. And then every day you tighten that press, and then the magic happens every single time you open a press. And I mean, I've opened so many presses now for the past 4 or 5 years, and it never goes away. The excitement. Did it work? What could I do different? Is there mold, or just sometimes you get that perfect flower, and you've captured it at peak beauty, and that's just the most magical feeling.
So I have not been successful at pressing flowers in the past, but I've had cheap presses, so I'm very excited to use yours. I've had like little square ones. My daughter a few
Yeah,
years ago gave me one for Christmas, and you could fit a few flowers in it at a time. And most of the time, mine would get moldy. What causes them to
right.
get moldy in the press?
Well, layers is the big, well, actually, I would start with where they're grown. So obviously, you've been pressing very fresh flowers. I get a lot more mold when the flowers have been flown in or treated with a kind of pesticide or any kind of treatment to stay fresh longer. That gets in the way of just pure pressing. Secondly, it's the layers. What kind of layers have you used? Have they been thick enough to capture to take out the moisture of that flower? So every flower has a different moisture level. So pom pom dahlias are nearly impossible to press whole. You need to deconstruct them. Is this the type of, do you have a big rose? Do you need to deconstruct all the petals in the middle and then reconstruct it after? So just like a florist or in your farm, you get to know almost like the conditioning of a flower. You get to know what every flower needs to shine. But the press does make a difference, the layers. And then for me, I'm a high pressure presser. It's like a funny thing to say, but there's a lot of flower pressers right now. I mean, at least in my feed on Instagram, because that's all the people I watch. And a lot of people don't use high pressure, but for me, I step on my presses. That's one of the reasons I designed my own strong presses that I could step on, and I step on them every day, and I constantly tighten my tightening knobs so that it basically gets down to as tight as it can be. So that's another problem if you're not doing that. And there's also crowding. When you've picked it, is like I would never pick a flower when there's dew on it, things like that.
So they need to be fairly dry when you're pressing them.
Yeah, like my poppies, for an example, I would have to wait. I couldn't pick them right away, like I would have picked them right away in the morning for bouquets. Now I'm going to wait for the heat to get all the moisture off of them, but then before they get kind of wilty, right? So there's also a magic time to press for pressing. And so it's either in the evening or mid morning.
Okay, and that's when you put them into the press, or that's when you
Yeah,
harvest them.
so well, I harvest them most often. I will press them right away. So recently, I've done two commissions, one at a big organic farm nearby, and I brought my press with me because I knew I was also pressing her vegetables and some flowers, and I knew that the quickest pressing is always the most successful. And when I talk about success, it's not just no molds, because that's the first step. Of course, we don't want molds, because how many people have mold and then just stop pressing? I'm talking about capturing the essence of the energy of the flower. And that's something that you just know. We all know what it feels like to hold a locally grown beautiful bouquet in our hands, and how the wedding photos look different, and the energy of that spirit of that looks different. And when you press a flower and you're able to really capture the aliveness of it, it's the same feeling that you get.
That's amazing. You just said you also pressed vegetables.
Yeah.
What kind of vegetables are you pressing?
Yeah, well, she's a good friend of mine, has a pretty large farm, and she grows mostly veggies and just a few flowers. So I'm doing like, she just picked me every little thing she could: little carrots, and then the carrot tops, little eggplants, little radishes.
Oh
So
my
we're gonna see how
gosh.
it goes, because I had my knife and my cutting board, and everything's done really thin. So it's a big experiment for me to see how that will go.
Oh my goodness. So you just did that recently.
Yeah, I just did that. So I kind of tucked that away for the winter, which is another wonderful part about flower pressing. And as an add on to a business you already have, for us, the winters are long. The summers are like boom, 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 get your flowers, whatever that is. And for me, I'm just filling my presses. And then in the winter, this is when I have the most amount of time to make my art, prepare for markets.
That's amazing. So once you put the flowers or vegetables into your flower press, how long is the process before you open it back up?
Yeah, so it's really different for each flower. Like a pansy, I had these really beautiful pansies that I bought, that someone that I know sells them to chefs, but I bought them for a print for the spring. And with the way I press them, which is chipboard, computer paper, basically just plain paper, and a bit of felt in a press, I was able to get them in 2 weeks. So I was able to make a print. It was my first spring print. So I pressed them 2 weeks and then made a print out of it. And then I was able to create multiple limited edition prints. And then I went to a market and I sold them.
Oh, that's so fascinating. So do you have to use multiple flower presses to
Yes.
continue going? Okay. How
Yes.
many
I have
presses?
Right now, I probably have about 10 presses filled.
Wow.
I've also designed two high pressure presses, where I've taken a scissor jack press that can press up to 2 pounds, sorry, 2 tons. And
Whoa.
I've fixed that to metal plates. So I've kind of got, I'm very interested in evolving flower pressing. And just to back up about techniques, there are a lot of, when you ask me about a hard to press flower, something like an orchid that has been flown in, that's really tough to press. If you talk to flower pressers, everyone has a way to do it. A classic way is for using a microwave press. Another way is to use silica in addition to a traditional press. So people will share secrets like, oh, I microwave for 30 seconds, then I put in it. You know how it goes, right? We have all these things we try to learn, and um, best practices we develop. But I just want to use pressure. I don't know why I'm so into it, but I just really just want to use pressure. So I developed these higher pressure presses for things like sunflowers, dahlias, peonies, to try to really get them as flat as I can. So I have two of those filled, and I have about 10 presses filled right now.
Wow. Okay, you just mentioned using a microwave. All of this is new to me. I mean, I grow flowers, I make arrangements, I wholesale my flowers. So the dried flower world, especially the pressed, is foreign. What do you mean you microwave them? Do you microwave yours before pressing them?
No, there is actually a microwave press that's pretty popular. It's been around for a long, long time. I actually speak at horticulture meetings often, and a lot of the seniors have these microwave presses from years and years ago. I guess they must have been popular at a certain time, and it's just a press that you can put in the microwave, and you zap the flour, and
Oh my
it
goodness.
speeds up drying. Yeah.
I haven't had a microwave in 15 years. And
I
when we
know I
sold
had
our
to
farm,
from a neighbor, and I tried it for a little bit. It just wasn't for me, but I know a lot of pressers use that as a technique.
that's so fascinating.
It's the smell of cooking flowers in a microwave is very distinct. I have to say that. Yeah.
Does it smell good? Like, does it smell like walking into a
It's
floral
odd.
shop? Okay.
No, it's actually it's part of the I very I have a like my I'm very sensory oriented, and the smell was one of the things that bothered me the most actually about it. Yeah.
Okay. I'm
Felt like
very
I was
sensitive to
really
smells.
yeah, just like it's an interesting thing, right? Because we're pressing flowers and we have all these words. In some ways you're killing the flower, some in some ways to look at it. You could say, you know, some days when I'm overwhelmed, I'm like, why am I growing this just to kill it? Like it's just like, what am I doing here? But it's not that, right? Of course, it's capturing their essence, it's holding on to their energy. And for me, what appeals to me the most is slow art and the act of pressing. So I really just stuck to that. And I think that a commitment to that actually, even though I've sometimes wondered, oh, should I try the microwave press again, when I get a tough to press flower, or should I try the silica? But the commitment for me is what helped me grow the press business, because I think if I hadn't have committed so strongly to just doing it the old fashioned way, I wouldn't have come up with a press that was so effective and that other people wanted to get their hands on.
That's great. Okay, I want to go back to you mentioned dahlias, and I think you said sunflowers and peonies. You mentioned some of the bigger flowers you have to deconstruct. Can you explain what do you mean? Are you literally taking out the florets or the petals, or how
Yeah.
are you doing that?
Yeah, you are literally taking. So it's also, I also like to say there's kind of two things that I do with a bigger flower. I'll either debulk it, or I will deconstruct it. So deconstructing is taking a ranunculus, and this is a list of things that most people will deconstruct pressers: ranunculus, dahlias, peonies, roses, something with multiple level layers of petals, right? So by taking all the petals out, pressing them separately, pressing the middles, maybe some stems if you want to have it shown with a stem in your art, or whatever you're creating. That is that is the best way to do it, because you won't get such a vivid press if you have all these kind of layers just soaked into each other. The issue with that, I would say, from my own eye and my own work, is that when you reconstruct all of those flowers, it can be kind of hard to differentiate what the original flower was, because part of the appeal of a fresh ranunculus is the luxurious layers, right? Other than is it the butterfly ranunculus that it has a more distinct middle? Those are wonderful to press, but it gets a little tricky to decide, like, oh, is that? And I've even been fooled from my folder of flowers, like, is this a peony, a dahlia, a rose, or ranunculus? Because when you lose that. So a way that I've learned to avoid that kind of sameness in reconstruction of these flowers is to debulk them, where I take the flower and you take off as many layers as you can, but then you press it whole. So in this case, you might take a rose and actually snip it in half with a pair of sharp scissors, take as much of the middle out, and then press it on its side. And we all know that what a rose looks like from its side, right? We don't all see, we're not all looking at these flowers from above, right? This isn't, unless it's unless we're an insect above a garden or an aerial view or holding a bouquet a certain way, we're seeing the rose from its side. We're seeing the ranunculus with that kind of heavy headed droop that they sometimes do because they're just so luxurious, right? So by debulking a flower, just taking your snips and just go into the flower, just start cutting into them, holding it up and thinking, how do I see this flower? What is the expression of what this flower is? And how do I press that? And that is, similar to the instinct you get when making a bouquet. It's the same type of thing, and not being afraid to wreck a few, and just to try it out. And that's been the most success I've had in my pressing, is to really just honor each flower for what it is. And instead of tearing everything apart and spending the time to put them back, I'm dealing with the whole kind of the entire time.
Thank you for explaining that. Okay, so once you have pressed the flowers and they have stayed and they're dry, what do you do next? Because I imagine they're pretty fragile at that point. Do you,
Yes.
is there a way to store them so until you're ready to use them?
Yeah. So this has, every presser has their own technique for this. I have a few larger presses that I have made out of plywood that I call kind of like my holding presses. I have them labeled, where a lot of my flowers, I will, even though I know they're done, will stay in there. So it's very hot, it's very humid, and something like a pansy or a poppy, let's say, we can imagine how delicate those petals are. Even in the most dried form, when you take those off the paper, they are just ready to be to take in moisture again. So yeah, they will shrivel like I have some examples on my table here, but even the pansies that were the most dry are now a little bit shriveled. So for my printmaking purposes, I need things flat, and so I will store them even longer than I think. Certain flowers have to be stored that way. Something like a nigella, a sunflower, some things like that. They'll just be fine stored, and I just use small boxes. And everyone's got their organization system. My husband's an archivist, so he's like, taught me how to properly store things with a small humid, those things that you get in a shoebox or something that take in humidity. And I put those in a box and I just have them all organized. So I'll have them actually organized by color, because a lot of my work is color based, and then seasons. So I'll be like spring pink, spring blue, and then I just put them all in the boxes. And then in the winter, I just, when the flowers are gone, they're still there.
And can you grab them by your hand? Or are you using like tweezers to pick them up? I imagine they're so delicate.
Yeah, I use a long handled tweezer. I use them. Probably have like 20 around the house because I lose them like I lose my glasses. It's just like I put them down everywhere and then I have to buy more. So a long handled tweezer is definitely needed. Any type of grease from your hand can wreck a petal right away. So
So good not to touch. What about stems? Like if you dry a stem, can you pick up a stem or do you still use
I
the
pick up a
tweezers?
stem. Yeah, I pick
Okay.
up a stem, but the tools kind of like your snips probably for you. My tweezers are like another hand to me. So they're just, as soon as I'm handling flowers, though, I have my tweezers out.
Okay. Thank you. And so then once you've stored them and you're ready to use them, what are some of the different mediums that you've seen? And also if you could talk about what mediums you use to put the flowers on.
Yeah, so I have seen so many ways of using these. I know a lot of pressed flower artists do resin work, jewelry work in resin. For me, I've been creating prints and have been slowly working with my printer in our city here to create a sustainable print that is made of all recyclable agave paper,
Oh,
but it's
wow.
still archival quality, like high quality artist prints. So that's really exciting for me because I can actually say, from like my new poppy print that I'll be releasing next month, I can actually say I grew the seed and it went through all this slow process. I created the print, and now the paper, like the actual print itself, is sustainable as well. And it's neat, to think about the sustainability of pressed flowers and how we think of the full circle of things. And, you were saying earlier, it's exciting to create something, not just compost the flowers. And it does add another notch to the full circle part of flowers to have one of these prints, that was created from locally grown flowers from spring in your area. So that's kind of exciting for me. I have a few other mediums that I'm quietly trying to work on. I've made shirts for a Christmas market that were sold out. And yeah, just a lot of little creative ideas that I'm trying to think of how to put these on different mediums.
So once you put them onto these other mediums, is there a certain amount of time that they're going to last, or is there a way that you finish your art so that they do last for a longer time?
Well, I think, if I was listening to this podcast, I'd be thinking two things. First of all, I might be listening because I'd be interested in commissions, especially for bridal bouquets. So that's a big part of this industry is saving bridal bouquets, framing your work, and, having that relationship with the bride and the flowers on that level. That type of work is done. It's not my main business. I mostly do original art and prints. I do accept a couple commissions here and there. And that type of work needs to be done very carefully on glass, on colored paper. It needs to be professionally framed, either outsourced to a custom framer some pressers use, or at home with the right kind of tools. And there's a whole conversation around that and how ephemeral that is, and the quality of the framing, and if there's air in the frame, and if how people know if their flowers are good. For my own work, then the main part of what I'm doing is I am trying to always get my fine art photographer, who is also my printer, who has worked with me for so long. And this is what's exciting about being a creative entrepreneur, is working with other creatives, because often, just like the flower farmers that I befriended, 10 years ago when I started this, who I still work with now, these people are often excited to solve problems with you. And my fine art photographer, bringing him this massive poppy print where I'm like, okay, can I come in now? I just finished it. I need to come in this minute because this might change. As I said before, the moisture is going to go in the petals. They're going to start to wizen. So he's like, come in now. Well, he's got air conditioning blowing in the studio, and the poppies are just flying everywhere. Like they're
Oh my
fluttering
gosh.
everywhere, so he's having to handle this and take the picture with them all flat. And, so I get a fine art photographer to do the work. And fortunately, he's the person I'm working with, and hopefully for others, if they find this relationship too, has grown with me to be able to capture the essence of what I'm trying to do. And so I will often take the print. He takes the fine art photograph. He calls me back right away as soon as he's ready. I pick it up, and then I will go often get it custom framed, or I'll frame it myself. And then I will sell the original, and then I'll sell limited edition prints.
So is the original with the actual pressed flowers? It
Yes.
is. And so
Yeah.
how are you putting them onto the surface? Are you gluing them on, or is there something to finish them off so that they don't start to decompose?
There are some pressers who use a spray. I don't use anything on mine. There is a conversation around, and I know it's very big in the bridal industry, where a larger company, let's say, will have a waiver. Will say you're engaged in this process of art making. This work is still ephemeral. And everyone has a different way to talk about this. And it's funny because earlier we were talking about how I got into this. And it was funny because I was like, I just want to avoid the conversation about vase life, because it can be, it's fantastic and it can be really deep, but it's also really tough for people to say, you are purchasing something that will die, and you're spending money on something that is going to go away. But for the moment that it's here is its purpose. And that's what you're engaging in. And so it's similar with pressed flower art. Surprisingly, you have to have this conversation in 2D, right? Where it's like the flowers do fade. And every flower, much like the nuance of the two cosmos picked at different times, pressing to different qualities, is the fading. And the best thing that I do is I use museum glass. It's very, very expensive. It's like, I don't know, 8 times the price of regular glass. It made the jump of my pricing go up crazy. So I only felt brave enough to start using it in a way when I knew I had an audience that was ready to go kind of up like that with me. But museum glass has a UV resistance. And so it does block as much UV as possible by having the glass in front of it. And that's why I like to get my stuff framed right away. I get that glass on. And yeah, I fortunately also have a fantastic framer who's been working with me forever. So he knows, he's before had to move a flower back into, back into the spot, but I trust him. I know he knows where it goes. So you can also frame yourself, but I do not have a big space, and framing, I do frame some things, but larger pieces, more ephemeral stuff, I just bring it right to my framer and he does that work. So yeah, so it's UV glass for me. There are sprays people have played around with. For me, that gets in the way of the energy of the work, so I don't use it.
Okay. So how are you making yours stick to the paper then? Or is it
Oh yeah,
just the
okay,
glass?
behind it, yeah.
Yes, I'm
so
sorry.
so no, that's great. I went on and on about that. So the which I hope is helpful to some people, but
Oh, absolutely.
the backboard is something that I'm reconfiguring this summer. Actually, I'm just talking about on my Instagram today. I just have been playing around. I used to use a thick mat board or a colored paper, high-end art paper. Recently, I've been finding a new backboard that I can use paint with. That's nice and thin and easy to frame. So then I glue the flowers on using an archival glue. And gluing is a whole other thing because, like, the reason why my poppies were fluttering in the fans was because you can only actually glue the tiny little middle of the pressed poppy. Because if you were to, or the stem slightly, but anywhere along the petals would show the glue because they're so thin. So you kind of get to know where to glue a flower down over time and how much glue to use, which is always less than you think.
Interesting. Thank you for sharing that. I want to go back to the bridal piece because a lot of our listeners are flower farmers who grow flowers for weddings. And I have actually, within the last couple of years, had more and more of my brides. I do a lot of DIY buckets and a la carte weddings where I'll make the wedding bouquet. And I've had brides reach out and they send me these beautiful pictures where they've had the flowers pressed. A few of them, though, have come back to me and said, I need a whole new bouquet to send something fresh. What do we need to know as farmers? What if a bride has used your flowers, they've gotten married, can they send that several day old bouquet or do they need fresh flowers to send off to be pressed?
So fresh flowers always press the best. So for my brides, I have a pretty strict 48-hour window. You can ship it in the mail in that time. I've gotten older flowers that have worked out fine. But as from a grower's perspective, with this customers that are looking to do this, what I've noticed, here's what I've noticed. It's popped off. It's a new thing, right? So I feel like what happens is a lot of, for my own audience, let's say, or customers, is they find out too late. The brides find out a little bit too late. Ideally, the pressing would be a conversation. If you were the grower and I was the presser and we had a bride, she would tell me you were the grower and I would actually talk to you. I would see what's in the flower bucket or what season, and that would be the ideal, to talk to the florist directly, the presser. I know flowers really well, so that'd be a quick conversation for us. And I would already know right away, like, oh, that bouquet can last a few days, or I need that right away. Or I would even say to you, can you slip in some chamomile? Because, that's just off the top of my head. Can you slip this in? Because it's going to make her thing better in the end. So I do know that, I have also had to go and get flowers from the source, for either the floral spot or the farmer. And that's just because the presser has gotten them too old. And you can't get a beautiful product if the flowers are too old. I mean, at the same time, I would argue sometimes there's a beautiful vintage look that happens when the flowers have had that experience of being in the wedding and then the next day they've been somewhere, and then you get them. So, but Yeah, fresh. It is something I think more and more farmers and florists are going to be hearing from brides. But hopefully, the trend will be to get the brides in early on it to have it as part of their wedding plans.
Perfect. So, as a grower, if one of my clients wants to have this done, would I need to, and like where I am, it's really hot. Today it's going to be 100 and I think 100 or 103 degrees. A bouquet is not going to hold up very well. So they're probably going to need fresh flowers. Do I need to recreate that bouquet, or are we just looking for the essence of the same flowers to be pressed to give the same feel?
Yeah, I mean that would be a fantastic add-on to your services is to give a small bucket of a few of the flowers from the bouquet, and even have that at pickup that's kept in water, that's not used, and then it's just one and done. Like you don't have to come back because the bride's away, they're busy. It takes a lot of work to do this. So that would be a really great add-on. If you're going to get your pressed, here's what I offer, and you don't need to arrange it. I mean, unless the bride is very stuck on the sentimental nature of having it held, but I don't find it's usually to that level. It's just they've taken time to plan their wedding in the season they want, often around the flowers that they want, and there's usually one or two in there that have a nostalgic representation for them, either grandmother or a color. And it's really important if they have that to be able to get that flower really fresh for them. So, yeah, that would be a fantastic way to do it.
And do you work with growers, or is it better for a bride or a couple to just reach out directly to you so the grower doesn't have to be involved?
Yeah, I usually my way in is from the bride, or often a maid of honor, or someone wanting to gift this to the bride, which is a great way as well. They also have to be willing to do the work though, because how you have to get it to me.
Yes.
But yeah, so I don't really have that relationship with growers necessarily directly, but it would be a great a connection to have for a grower to have a presser in their area that they like the work that they do, and they work really well. Because like all of these relationships, if you're working well with the other business person, or it gets really quick, and it doesn't take a lot of our time for money. We can just develop these relationships, be like, for me, it's like, here's my photographer, here's my framer, here's my grower, and everything's quick and successful.
Perfect. I'm curious because you're in Ottawa, Canada. If we have a US couple that wants to preserve their flowers, can we send flowers to you?
I don't know, actually. I am not sure. But, you know, what I'd love to do is for someone to just press the flowers there. You know, I think, well, actually, like what I've been playing around with lately is, and believe me, I love large scale. I love the whole thing. Like when I did floral bouquets and events, I was all about big. But there's something to be said about a small notion of something. It doesn't need to be so complicated. The process is very complicated, as we've talked about, And what if, I've worked very hard on my custom frames and my process. What if you had a few flowers, something special that you just wanted kept really nicely? How could you send that to someone and say, "Can you make a nice little frame of this and send it back to me?" That ideally is the work that I would like to figure out, the pathway I would like to figure out to get rid of all the fuss. You know, Sending flowers and dealing with flowers in the middle of the hottest summer is hard. So, anyway, that's just something that I don't have an answer. I don't have a product to sell or anything, but I would love to get in the mail just a few flowers and someone to say, "I love your circle frames. It's the perfect memory for my wedding. Can you send this back to me well framed?"
That's beautiful. I like that idea. Do you teach or offer any workshops on how to press flowers?
Yeah, I do. I do a lot of online workshops. I have my first on farm at my friend's flower farm, who I've been working with for forever. I'm going to her farm this Saturday in the Ottawa area, and we are picking and pressing right away. So I get to really talk about this freshness. And I do most of my online workshops. I pop them up on my Instagram, and they're mostly attended by Americans, actually. So yeah.
Do you have any coming up?
I don't have any coming up. I just have this one. And then in September, I have art shows and whatnot. And then I will have one in October.
Okay. So if
Yeah.
people were to get on your email list, would that be a good way to find out
Yes,
about
that's
an
a good way to
upcoming?
find out. Although I rarely send an email, I have to get better at that email marketing. But I talk a lot. I'm always on Instagram. I'm always updating in my profile what's kind of happening next. So, and I also do I do one-on-one coaching, which is a great way. That's how I learn everything. Is a mentorship. I paid pressers early on. Just give me an hour. I have a list of questions. Give me 1 hour of your time, and you know how it is. You just get right to the point. So another service that I offer if you're waiting for a workshop and there's not one coming up.
Excellent. And we'll provide links for those in today's show notes. I'm curious. I just have a few more questions for you today.
Great.
We've talked a lot about sustainability. How do you view pressing flowers as part of the sustainable approach to floristry?
Well, that's a personal, that has a personal and a ecological and a business viewpoint. I could go every direction. Personally, sustainable floristry was what I was doing before, but I was burning out, and that wasn't a sustainable business for me, both financially and energy levels. And for what I wanted deeply inside was to have more time with my family in the summer. And in terms of, the ecology of, your neighborhood or your city or your area, I think that I'm just I'm another conduit to celebrating what is available locally. And I will forever tell every bride and every post I can talk about that if you want to press your flowers, get them locally. And I think that's just another reason for people to maybe, if you wanted your flowers pressed as a bride, it might be just another reason not to get that quote for something that's flown in, because you're really dedicated to the spirit of this, and you want to press your flowers well. I think it's fun to avoid throwing the flowers out. And, even flowers that, when you're making a bouquet and, if you wanted to press in season like you would be now, even when you're taking the bottom of like a larkspur and you're kind of, you have a tall larkspur and you have all the bottom little ones coming off, but you need to take them off in order to put them in the bouquet properly. Those are just pop them in the press.
Oh,
Those
I
are
love
just
that idea.
beautiful. Yeah, so there's so many of the flowers that you're conditioning and processing right now that can then just go into the press and be used for something else, which is just like totally full circle for me. Yeah.
I love that idea. Let's see her. You've also talked about slowing down, that the local flowers, trying to process them and get them out, was a little fast paced for you with your life and everything you have going on. You described pressing flowers as an opportunity to slow down and reconnect. Why do you think this resonates with people so much in our current busy world?
I think that I think it comes down to this middle spot where we're both in a period of being nostalgic, and we're both and hopeful. And in order to, I think pressing flowers is right in the middle of those two things. The act of pressing a flower is actually a hopeful act. You're not sad when you're pressing it, or I mean, not to say nostalgia is only a sadness, it's a feeling, it's hard to describe. But you're not necessarily nostalgic in that moment. Maybe you are, but it's more of a hopefulness for the future, right? When you've opened that book at the used bookstore and out has fluttered someone's flower, inside of that fluttering is the mix of both. It carries the hope of that person, that they've saved this for one day, and the past as well. And I think right now, in as a culture, or as a trend, but not trend in terms of branding and business, but just as a trend inside of our hearts, is that's where we are right now. And I think, for me personally, slowing down and tuning in to the spirit of that has really fulfilled me as a mom, as a community member, as an artist. And I think that this is why people are paying attention, because they know they're in this as well. So whether they're pressing themselves or they're just enjoying the process of it, it is where we are right now.
I love that. That's such a beautiful answer. Thank you. Okay, before we wrap up, I want to ask you, what advice would you give to someone who is interested in getting started with pressed flowers?
Well, I would say if you grow a different, just get your hands on some fresh flowers. Get a bouquet, get a mixed bouquet, go to the market, get as many different kinds as you want, and just find a really, really nice press, or make your own. Get some plywood, make your own press, and just get chipboard. Do not use cardboard. You'll be disappointed. Cardboard has ridges in it. And if you're doing like a big flower, it's going to have ripples in it. Get some chipboard, get some paper. If you can find some old felt, you can cut up a sweater if you want some more moisture in there, and step on that press the flowers, have fun, press them in all the angles, press long stems and short little buds, grab little flowers from the lawn, get weeds from your community, and just fill a press full of flowers. And you know then take them out and learn. Like it's your heart and your hands and your will and all of these things working at once, and you start to get experience. So you just have to do that first press. You have to fill that first press, you have to unload that first press, and you have to find what you're successful with and keep going, that see what wasn't, and try to figure out, how can I do that better?
I love that. Great advice. Okay, if someone is interested in getting your press or attending one of your workshops or following your journey, where can they find you?
They can find me on Instagram. I'm the August Press. And I also have a website where you can order directly my presses. I am uploading my prints this fall, so I'll have a little print shop as well for my limited edition and open edition prints. And I will have all my workshops on there as well.
Fabulous. And we'll include links to that in today's show notes. Before we say goodbye, I haven't done this before, but I've heard this on other podcasts that I listen to, and I love this idea of doing a few spitfire questions. So I'm going to
Oh,
put you on the
fun.
spot here and ask you a few questions. What is your favorite flower to press?
Flax flower.
Oh, flax. Okay. What is your least favorite flower to press?
And dahlia.
Okay, my favorite flower. I can't wait to try pressing them.
I should
And
be specific. A pom pom dahlia.
okay, and let's see here. What is the easiest flower to press?
Wildflowers. Flowers that have the wildflowers are they're there. They do not need a lot of moisture. They're very industrious flowers, and they press really well. It's the first place I'd start pressing, and it's why little kids have presses full of really beautiful flowers, because they're picking wildflowers.
Oh,
They're
I
not
love
picking
that.
these cultivated flowers.
Yes. What is the most unique item you have pressed?
Say the radish I just pressed the other day.
That sounds super fun. What is one thing you have not pressed that you would like to try pressing?
Um, I just I just have started pressing lotus flowers,
Oh,
and I'm interested in pressing lily pads. Lily pads curl up after being out of the water in like a minute. So I'm really
okay.
trying to figure out how to press a lily pad.
Oh, that'll be fun. You'll have to hopefully share on your social media
Yeah.
when you successfully do that, and we'll be following along on that journey. Kate, this has been so fun chatting with you. I'm so excited for my press to come in the mail, and I will have to tag you when I try pressing some flowers. I'm sure I'll have some failures at first, but I can't wait to try preserving some of my flowers. So thank you so much for coming on today's podcast and sharing your wisdom. Before we say goodbye, I promise this is my last question. Is there anything I haven't asked you today that you would like to leave our listeners with?
I'd like everyone to push through the mold and the mess and the failure, to, if you really want to hold on to the spirit of the season or your garden or your memories with your children, push through that. It doesn't take much longer than you think to figure it out. The failure rate is very high at the beginning. Just don't give up.
I love that. Don't give up and push through. Kate, thank you so much. This was a fabulous conversation, and I can't wait to hear about your workshops this fall and follow along as you are showing some of your artwork this fall. So, thank you and have a wonderful day. Bye
Great. Thank
bye.
you so much. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye. Thank you, flower friends, for joining us on another episode of The Backyard Bouquet. I hope you've enjoyed the inspiring stories and valuable gardening insights we've shared today. Whether you're cultivating your own backyard blooms or supporting your local flower farmer, you're contributing to the local flower movement, and we're so happy to have you growing with us. If you'd like to stay connected and continue this blossoming journey with local flowers, don't forget to subscribe to the Backyard Bouquet podcast. I'd be so grateful if you would take a moment to leave us a review of this episode. And finally, please share this episode with your garden friends. Until next time, keep growing, keep blooming, and remember that every bouquet starts right here in the backyard.